locally. There we go. What do you say? I turn that off and on a couple more times.
Love it.
It keeps us awake.
It sure does. What a positive outlook, Liz. That's beautiful.
Thanks.
All right. I'm really, really happy to have the group of you here with me, listening and contemplating. Some of you are still on the fence about whether this is something you think you can achieve, and others of you know that no, I can do this. And so my goal today is to walk us through three different pieces. The first is an explanation of what it is I'm hoping for from you. The second is some instruction on how I have accomplished it and how I think you might go about it. And then the third is talking about how the system will actually function. So just because we're getting a little bit of feedback, I'm going to go ahead and mute people, but that's not because I don't want your input. So this is the genesis of this conversation. When I arrived in Stanford, I came from a system in Denver where we met with our students. I absorbed the pattern of my senior rabbi, and he would meet with his students 8 to 10 times before the big celebration of becoming bar or bat mitzvah. So what did I know? That's what I started doing. Hey, Leah. And so when I got to Stanford, I continued with that, and it's lovely. It's nice. As I've spoken with more colleagues, I've found out that nobody has that kind of time to meet with students. And I was fine with that. I kept going for several more years, but then I sort of started realizing that a couple of things were happening. My goal in meeting with students that much was to form a deep relationship with them. But what was actually happening was that I was getting bogged down with kids in the writing process. And first of all, that's not my skill set. I'm not a fabulous writer, so it's silly that I'm the one who's trying to edit their texts and help them pull out ideas in that way. But in the midst of all that too, it meant that I wasn't actually even spending the time creating these deep relationships as I was hoping for. So I wasn't achieving any of my goals. And then I started hearing from other folks, including more Erica, about other systems out there where a team comes together and achieves this goal of writing a Devar Torah. It's great for the kid. It's great for the clergy person. It's really fun for the volunteers. And that's where I reached out to you to see if we could put something like this together for Sinai. Especially in the next couple of years, we have very large Bnei Mitzvah classes. I think 22 this year, and somewhere maybe even a little bit higher than that the year after that, 25 maybe, 22 also. I had them backwards. Okay. So it would, if I wanted to, it'd be too much, and it takes me away from other things that I am good at and where my my time probably is better spent. What I do is I meet with the kids with a fairly well-tested curriculum, and in the course of that time, what we're trying to do is, and I explain this to the families, we're trying to write a Devar Torah, which is not a bar mitzvah speech. I don't think I've ever allowed kids to give their thank yous to tutors and teachers in the Devar Torah. Sometimes they'll write about their mitzvah projects, but I tell them really only if it fits into what you want to say anyway. There's no great value in talking about one thing and then turning and saying, for my bar mitzvah project, I did this. So we really focus in on the text of Torah and trying to take that and demonstrate in the form of teaching why it's still relevant today. Why are we as a group of people sitting in a sanctuary in 2022 listening to a text that talks about animal sacrifices? Where's the relevance in that? So that really is the core of the process. And what ends up happening are sacred conversations. It is really exciting. And my job, and hopefully your job as well, is to ask the questions of these kids, listening to their responses, reflecting back to them what you just heard, and helping them put it in context in ways that are going to be going to be really powerful and make them proud on the big day. Um, and so I've got some tools that I use that I wanted to show you. But before I do that, I've now kind of accomplished the first task for today, which was telling you about how we got to this moment, why I reached out to you, what the system is meant to do. So let me pause and see if there's any questions or clarifications from anybody about this program.
Rabbi, would you still meet with the students like on your own to get to know them also before their bar mitzvah date?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. That is, it's not the very next thing. Actually, you know what? No, I'm gonna flip it around. It's gonna be the very next thing I'll talk about.
Okay. And then could we still consult with you like ahead of time to like talk about some of the main points that we should cover? Because I mean, you're the expert on this. I could tell you that I am not. So I actually end up learning from you. So if, like we could have like a pre-con also to like make sure that the kids are getting the main points out of the text, because some of them are more difficult than others. I'll be honest with you.
You know, it's a good question, Robin. Let me table it, because the approach that I use and that I'm going to put in place for you all, may cover some of that and show you why the question that you just asked is actually not the right question.
Okay.
So does anyone else want to ask questions that I'm not going to answer? Okay. One principle, and I want to, Robin's question reminded me that I should say this. One principle to remember, and I say this to all the kids, is this is your Devar Torah. It's not mine. And with mom and dad sitting there, I say to the kid, if mom is pointing out something and saying, oh, you should write about this, and you don't want to write about that, you can respectfully say, back off, mom, this is not your Devar Torah. And if I push you in a direction and you don't like it, say, back off, Rabbi Jay, this is my Devar Torah. So similarly, in partial response to Robin's question, it's not actually going to be about you, any of you, showing them the Torah portion. That's their job, to read through and understand the Torah portion. So let me get into some of the tachlis about how I do this, to show you how it works. I meet with the family. I have been meeting with the families around 8 times. The first meeting is with me and the whole family, the kid and the parents. And I would like for you all, when you match up with a kid, I'd like for you to join me in that meeting. So you'll hear exactly what I'm saying to the kid, and you'll see that it becomes kind of formulaic. There's a list of, it's a 20, 25-minute meeting. It's not a lengthy one. During that meeting, in addition to explaining all that we're going to be doing and orienting them to the process and introducing them to you, I will be giving the kid this worksheet. Oops, let me share this with you. Here we go. Can everybody see the Devar Torah worksheet? Good. So I send them away from that first meeting with this worksheet. And there's 4 steps that I ask them to accomplish in the time between our meetings. The first step is the big one. And they have a packet printed out with the JPS translation of their whole Torah portion. Remember, they're only reading 15 verses. The Torah portion is several chapters. So I tell them, sit with a parent and read the whole thing. That's number 1. Then number 2, I ask them to list the main ideas. And I tell them, you've only got 3 sentences. That's it. You have to get the whole idea of that big packet of paper across in 3 sentences. Then I tell them I want them to go back and find their verses, and often I'll mark it out with them, on the page so that they can see exactly where their verses are. I don't know, chapter 13, verse 7 to 20. I'll bracket it so they go back and read it. And here I ask them in number 3 to go back and restate that text in their own words. Don't try to copy it, but in the way you talk. There should be no shalls or thous. Make it yours. And then this is the most important one. I explained to them, I want you to ask 3, 4, 5 questions about the text. They can be little things like, what does this word mean? Or they can be big things like, why in the world would God ask that of Abraham? Or why does Moses seem to struggle so much with his anger? Or I don't know, any number of questions. And then that's sort of it for the first assignment. It's the big one. And I explained to them that, that this is the one big assignment. So from that first meeting, they'll go away with this assignment to do. I'm going to meet with them the next meeting, because in that meeting, I plan to do 2 things. One, to have that really good one-on-one encounter with the kid, ask them all kinds of questions and just develop a rapport. That's the most important piece that I think I can do. And then the other thing that we're going to do is talk about the questions that they asked here, above, and we're going to try to come up with one thesis statement or one theme or one idea. That's what'll go in this box. When I get to that point, I am pretty much going to then hand them over to you. So they're going to come to you having already looked at the whole Torah portion, having already asked their detailed questions about, the specifics and the generals of that material. They're going to come to you with some unformed idea of what they want to write about. And then you're going to be able to take that and say, all right, so, what was it about this idea that grabbed your attention? Where do you feel like these kinds of dynamics happen in your life? How does this idea of, we just had a nice Devar Torah about the rule about leaving the fruit that falls from the trees on the ground for the poor. Okay, so where do we see that kind of value taking place in the world today? Through food pantries, and we donate our shelf-stable foods because that's the equivalent of our gleanings, the corners and whatnot. And so in that first conversation probably, you're going to be helping them translate an idea that they've found with me in the text into the beginnings of a deliverable. One of the other things too that I'll do, actually I'll probably leave it to you all to do, is I like to help them understand what a general Devar Torah starts to look like. And here I'll share this with you too. This is, I'll provide you this, don't worry. You don't have to remember any of this. But this is my outline. It does not need to follow this pattern. This is really just a very generalized format. So you'd start with writing a hook. You want to get them in, get them engaged, get them paying attention, get them to sit up and say, oh, yeah, that's an interesting story. From there, you've got their attention, you transition to the Torah portion itself. And I sort of remind them that you can't assume basic knowledge. So if you assume that nobody in the room has ever heard this story, even if you have Noah's Ark and it's basic knowledge, what does the congregation need to know in order to be brought up to speed? So it shouldn't be long. It should be a paragraph maybe, and it can have a quote in there if there's something really relevant. But that first body paragraph should be kind of orienting us to the Torah. But then the next paragraph is, tell us why you're focusing us in on this piece. What's interesting to you, kid? Why are we looking here? And explain the idea, bring it up. The next paragraph, maybe, it might take multiple paragraphs, is to bring it into today. What is it that we're supposed to get out of this text? How do we here? I think a couple examples. How is today's volunteerism like the Torah's version of animal sacrifice? Or how is the modern forms of taxation in America like the Torah's idea of temple offerings and things like that? So you begin to translate this ancient text into the real world. And then, not always, but usually the text would finish with some kind of a charge. What do you want listeners to get from this material? Why are you telling us this? How should we change the way we think or behave or experience the world? Those kinds of approaches to wrapping it up. There should be a takeaway for people. Let me pause there and allow for questions. Robin, does that, before I call on Judah and Liz, does what I just shared set you a little at ease about having to be a Parsha expert before you even see the kid?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So yes, it gives a good outline and it focuses how to do it. I still think that some of the text, like, Noah, no problem. Abraham, no problem. Some of the ones where it's more like sacrifices and some of that other stuff, to me, sometimes that's harder to help guide.
Yep. So I am putting in the chat box my cell number. In fact, I'm looking at the list here and most of you have it. In fact, you might all have it. But I am going to be so incredibly grateful to all of you for helping me with this that I am making a commitment to try and be very much available. And so when I see your name pop up on my ID, I'm going to do my best if I'm in a meeting to say, hold on one second, I've got a mentor who's working with one of our teams, has a question. So if you're meeting with them on Sunday afternoon and I'm someplace and I get that text, I will do everything I can to answer you real time. But again, while you're correct, the details of some of the stuff in Leviticus is intimidating. My intention is to send the kids to you for their first meeting with you, having a pretty good idea, having worked through some of the confusions already with me, and having a pretty good idea of where they want to go with it. So you may not need to be really well versed on all the details of that stuff. Judah, Liz, and Karen.
How long should these Devar Torahs be in terms of when they actually speak them?
Yeah, good question. I always tell the kids, I don't care. A really well-written, concise Devar Torah that lasts for 3 minutes is better than a meandering one that lasts for 10. But usually we end up somewhere in the 5-minute range. That would end up being 2 pages, double spaced, something along those lines. A good solid 5-paragraph essay is probably going to get you pretty close. That's probably a way to think about it. Liz?
When they're sitting down with their parents and filling out that sheet and you're meeting with them, how far in advance of the bar mitzvah, the bat mitzvah is that?
Perfect. We will go into great detail about that in the 3rd section, but the quick answer is about 2 months.
Okay.
Karen.
That was my question too, was what was the timeline?
Great.
Great question, Liz.
Great minds thinking alike.
Jay,
So, yeah.
is the expectation that we would then be like, okay, so it's a 2-month timeline, be meeting with them like on a weekly basis and giving them the like, okay, here's the next step, go and, just get it on paper, then edit it, that like, what's the... Yeah, good question. So this is probably the one piece that I remain less clear on, and I'll explain why. I have been meeting with them each week. And at the end of our session, I make very clear to them, what is your homework? It's usually, write me a paragraph, come back with a paragraph next week. And sometimes we take a pivot and we don't go in the direction we thought we would, so paragraphs don't get used. But generally, that ends up putting together chunks that we can stitch together with transitions. And before we know it, we've got a whole product. My understanding is that many systems out there in synagogues do not meet with the kids as much as I'm suggesting.
But that relies on some things that I don't know if we can rely upon. Jane and I were talking about it this morning. There are places that, where they meet with the kids 2 or 3 times. That assumes that the parents, I'm sure, or a teacher at school or someone has got to be helping these kids put material together. We are not seeing in general great parent engagement. I think that we can temper that a little bit. As I was saying to Jane, when I meet with the family, I often say, okay, from here on, I'm going to be meeting with you. And I probably implicitly suggest that the parents don't have to think about this anymore. Rabbi's got it. So I think if that language was changed in that first meeting with you, saying, now Liz is going to be meeting with you moving forward after our, my next meeting with you, but mom and dad, we're going to need you to also stay a part of the team and making sure that progress is happening. So that might help. That is a long-winded way of saying that the system would assume you would probably meet with the kids 5 or 6 times as it exists now. But with a little bit of trial, I wouldn't be surprised if it could be reduced to 3 or 4 times that you would meet with a kid. You'd meet with them every other week, and the assignments in between would be a little bit bigger. I usually share, I have them share their Google Doc with me. So when we're meeting virtually, which happens more than half the time at this point, I've got their document on the screen with me. They're reading it to me. We're making changes together. I can underline something I want to come back to. So we work on this document live together. And so you could say, if you wanted, why don't you send me a draft, next week? We're not meeting for 2 weeks, but I want to see what you're doing midweek. Go ahead, Dennis. Unmute.
That's what I'm just. Question I have is sources also. Do you help the kids supply other sources for doing is understanding the text? Because some of them also are super dry as, dust. So they could be, just a long exposition of names upon, somebody else's. And to try and make something out of that, it's got to be like a bear. I mean, for some kid, he could get something that's really an easy posture and it's like, it writes itself. And another kid gets something that is so horrendously difficult or so nothing. I mean, it's just like, it's, 10 paragraphs of people begetting people. Doesn't leave them a lot of, or her a lot.
Correct. There are no portions that are just genealogy. All the parshiot have other material in them. Some of the parshiot are completely full of leprosy or impurities or forbidden sexual relationships. So it does require a little creativity at times. I'm not going to pretend that they're all easy to find material in. Again, the kid will arrive to you with at least a starting point, and it's not going to be found in genealogy. Or if it is, we will already have talked about where else they in their lives see lists of names. And why do we list names? Why does it matter to hold on to the story of who begot who? So they're going to come to you with a starting point. You won't have to help them create that. The first part of your question, other texts. Yes, but not nearly always. Sometimes the texts kind of present themselves, and it can be anything. It can be something from the Constitution, or I don't know, a Mary Oliver poem, or something you've come across. You're all pretty well versed people. It doesn't have to come from Talmud or from Midrash or whatnot. So if you see some place that another text occurs to you, you can suggest it. But very often I suggest texts and the kids don't choose to use them, which is just fine. So most of the Divrei Torah that I write with these kids do not have extra textual citations.
What happens to the kid that gets down to the final strokes and he's still nowhere,
Yeah, I have my first kid like that right now in a long time. And there were extenuating reasons why. She was dealing with some foundational challenges with Judaism. And so I kept mom in the loop. She knew that we were not making progress, that we were going to need to be following a different track. Part of what I'm going to ask you all to do when you finish with a session is to send out a 2-sentence summary or update. This is what we talked about today. This is Johnny's homework. And send it to the parents and copy me, just so we can see. We should not find ourselves surprised at any point along the way. That when that happens to us, in other parts of our system at the synagogue, it's when we stop and say, okay, something was broken if this was possible. So you shouldn't find yourself in that spot, Dennis. Go ahead, Judah. And then Liz.
Each kid's going to come to the table with a different skill set, knowledge base, attitude, positive, negative, indifferent, and any number of other factors. And we're there to be guides, teachers, support. Will we need to know ahead of time if any of the kids are more, I don't want to say problematic, or that we should expect, or how we should potentially be handling them? We're not going to know them. We're not going to know them before they start. They're going to be with us X number of times, 3 to 6 times. Some kids may not be able to be motivated. Some kids won't react well to a little bit of a push. So just in terms of having a little background, maybe? I don't know.
That's a great suggestion. I had thought about another related aspect, but not quite that. I had thought about the fact that, and this is part 3, but it's about matching you up with your students. My guess is that there will be times when one of you will see a name on the list and say, oh, I know that family. I'll happily do that kid. There'll be other times where we see a kid and we know something about the background where we'll say, we think that Robin might be the right person for this. Generally, I don't expect to be the ones matching you. I think it's going to have more to do with your availability and your maybe familiarity with the family. But every once in a while, we might go that extra step and say, call someone and say, we have a kid coming up. We think this is the reason why you'd be the right fit. But Judah, your suggestion is great, to spend a few minutes with you before you meet with a kid. Maybe that first family meeting, you and I get together. I'm speaking to all of you. You and I get together 5 minutes early, and I give you whatever background I have on the family, whatever dynamics, messy divorce, autistic older brother, problem behavior the last 3 years, that kind of stuff. But honestly, I only know the kids to a degree myself, and each one is sort of a crash course in figuring out who this kid is. Every once in a while, a kid will surprise me, and I'll think through the course that this kid knows what they're talking about and is pretty savvy, and then I find out, oh no, they're dumb as my shoe, and they fake it real well. We don't have any of those dumb kids in Sinai here. In Denver, we had them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Liz.
What is the temple's view or attitude toward other children who learn differently?
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan of pulling them outside tradition. There are a couple reasons why we would do a Sunday service, but a kid's learning ability is not one of them. If a kid comes with particularly significant learning differences, you would know that from us. We would be very clear with you about what we're attempting. We have a service coming up in October with a kid who we're hoping is just going to be able to do the Shema. That kid probably would not be matched with one of you for writing a Devar Torah. That would just be too stressful for him. Anxiety is his issue. But if a kid, if we know that they are, on the spectrum, or that they've got, I don't know, any number of things, we would make sure that you knew that. And if, we would, if it didn't feel good, then we wouldn't match you with them.
There was a temple in New York City where my aunt used to go, and they were very proud of their program for children who learn differently. And and that was a badge of courage that they wore.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
we're not big enough that we have so many overwhelmingly
Yeah.
non-typical learners, but I'm proud of our ability to work with all of our learners where they are. I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the question you said, like, at the beginning, this is their Devar Torah. What happens is, as you go through the process and you try and do is, get the child to do is get it in a form that really kind of works. But that's not their choice. They like it the way it is. And
Yeah.
your input is, that was very nice of you, Dennis, but I don't give a damn. Okay. So
Yeah.
I guess the question I have is, how directed are we to be in terms of helping them to really form a Devar Torah that, somebody that I would be happy to give?
Right. So that's a great question. I'll have two-piece answer. The first piece would be to say, if they're committed to their text and it sucks, you can absolutely say, I'm proud of you. Good for you for sticking to your guns. That's a piece of maturation, and that's what we're trying to do here, is grow you into adults. And you can, let me know if you feel like you want to make sure I know that you did not help with this. But the second piece is that I've gotten pretty good at either listening to what they say and then saying, let me try something here for you, and I'll put it in red on the screen, and I'll write a sentence and say, this is what I think I heard you say. Did I come close? And they'll say, yeah, that's right. And then I'll say, okay, part of your homework this week is to take my words and make them into your words. And so in doing that, I can help them articulate a little better the ideas that they've got, which is usually their biggest challenge. And then finally, I'll say, every once in a while, you get a kid who's not making progress, and I have ended up much more involved, and at times literally writing the stuff and saying, am I getting this close? Do you feel like these are your ideas? And just iterating that I may be putting this on the screen for you, but I'm trying very hard to make sure that they're your ideas. So in extreme cases, they may not be the kids' words, but they are the kids' ideas. But I haven't gotten too many of those kids who said, no, back off, Rabbi, this is, I want to do it my way.
Can I bring that kid to you?
Yes. Anytime things are not going the way you'd expect, you can bring the kid and certainly the process back to me. Absolutely.
Rabbi, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So are we in charge of the communications with the parent? Like if the kid is not like working to their potential, or we're having issues, does that go through us first? Obviously CCing you on it.
Oh, yes.
Only bringing you in if it's like major issue.
Yeah, keep me on the email thread so that I know, but also so that the parents know that I'm on the same page with you. I don't want any of the families to feel like that the families were abandoned to this person they don't know. The other element, which is really up to you, is about scheduling. This can be done in one of two ways that I can think of, maybe more ways that you can think of. You can either be in contact with the families directly and just find convenient times. It may be just quickest to have you find out from them that Wednesday nights at 7 are perfect, and then you're done. If you don't want to be doing that, if that's not where your attention is, we've got a fabulous resource here with us. Jane is just really efficient at matching up busy schedules. So if you'd rather that Jane do the scheduling for you with the families, that's also something that is an option. Dennis?
Do you do all of them, or virtually all of them, by Zoom or some sort of way of that? Or could you arrange to do in person? Because I'd find in person to be a lot easier, at least mentally for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these days families tend to have an opinion on that. They either prefer to be in person because they know their kid and they know that it works better. And I agree with you. And I'm relieved when that happens. Or they know that it's going to be on Zoom because the evenings are busy and schlepping up to the shul is, is just, if you don't have to, that's better. And then, you get some families who, like it just happened yesterday. The family asked me, should we do our meetings on Zoom or in person? And I said, well, that's really largely up to your preference. And they said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, in person's always better. They said, great, we'll do it in person. So, yeah, if, Judah, you may want to stick to virtual being over in Ardsley. It might be easier for you to do it that way. So if we knew that a family really wanted to be in person, maybe we wouldn't match them with you.
Are they generally evenings, during the week, or are they weekends? Can it be done?
Or late afternoons. The kids tend not to get home until 3. So I don't think, Jane, we often have meetings much earlier than 3. Yeah. New Canaan has like a monthly half Wednesday. So sometimes you get like a family who says, oh, could we do 1 o'clock? And you're thinking to yourself, don't you have school? Or during school vacations, they'll say, can we move our appointment to 11 a.m.? But generally, yeah, 3 o'clock onward, and then weekends. I don't do appointments on Shabbat. That's my preference. Betsy?
2 logistical questions. One is, Jane, if we decide to do something over Zoom, will you be setting up the Zooms for us? That's one. And number 2 is, do you care where we meet with the kids? Can they come to our homes? Can we go to Starbucks? Or does it feel important to you that they be in the shul?
No, it doesn't. Thank you. Jane, why don't you answer the first question?
Yeah, I can set up the Zoom for you, no problem. I'll send you all the information.
We've got lots of Zoom accounts. What do we have, Erica, like 5 or 6 or 7 of them at this point? Why can't we hear you? You're not muted, but we can't hear you. We had this problem the other day too for you. We have lots of accounts. And so Jane will make sure that you could all be meeting with a kid at the exact same time and there'd be no conflict with accounts. And then, Betsy, to answer your question, no, I feel no commitment to it being at the synagogue. Yeah, we'll have fewer accounts, but it'll still be no problem. The only thing I would say would be, if you're going to be meeting in your home, if you're bringing them to your home, you might want to find a way to just be smart about it, to invite the parents to sit in your front room while you're working in the dining room with the kid. You wouldn't want to ever create a situation where there was the possibility of, some accusation. But no, if you want to do Starbucks or I suppose if you want to go to their home, whatever you and the family work out is fine from my point of view. So let me just look at my list real quick and make sure I'm not forgetting anything that I wanted to mention. Okay, so let me show you.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
You said your preference is not to do this on Shabbat. I imagine that's because you like to have some boundaries and some personal time.
Yeah.
But if this is something that made sense to do on Shabbat, like it's studying Torah, it's, all of that, is that something you'd be okay with if that's a time that works for us and the family?
Totally. Okay. Yeah. What a great way to spend Shabbat. You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Karen.
So Bnei mitzvahs begin right around the beginning of September when school starts, right?
Usually. Let me show you this screen now that I was just about to transition to. As it works out, just the way the year fell out with holidays and family choices, the next service we're going to have is going to be after the summer, is going to be Sophia Kramer. And her service is not going to be until October 1st, which means that if we stick to a schedule, you would probably meet with me and the family for that first meeting, normally somewhere around August 1st. I think Jane was saying that this family is going to have some camp conflicts, so we might bump that early. But here I've got on this spreadsheet this range from about August 1st to October 1st. There is the 8 weeks of time until she celebrates on October 1st. Her parents are Jen and Patrick. Here's Jen's email address. The box here for mentor is blank. And then any notes that you wanted to follow along with and fill in could be here. And so this is going to be a document that will populate with all the kids coming up. I'm going to give everybody the link to this document so you can go here anytime you want to either fill in notes or to say to yourself, I finally finished that project. I've got a little time. I think I'll take on a kid. And you can come here and you can either drop your name in on your own, or you can ask me about a kid and decide if that's the kid you want to take on. You can work with as many kids as you have capacity for. If you want to take on 3 kids at once, that's awesome. There's no problem with that. Just making sure that you have the bandwidth to focus on their process. It's funny, at the beginning of pretty much every session with every kid, I've given them a homework assignment. They're halfway through their process, and I'll say to them, read me what you've written, everything, all the old stuff plus the new stuff. And I do that for 2 reasons. One, because I can't remember what this kid is working on, so I need the refresher. And the second reason is it develops an increasingly deep relationship with their text, because they're going to have to deliver this thing. And if they've read it to me 6 times before we even get to the rehearsal, then it's going to be a text that they really know and can deliver with some degree of comfort and ease. So, if you're working with 3 kids, you'll probably, unless you have a better memory than I do, you'll probably want to hear what they've been doing, including the old stuff, just to keep it fresh for them and keep it fresh for yourself. So I'm checking my list Karen, do you have another question, or is that hand still up from before?
So, we work with the kid for, basically an 8-week period, depending on, I guess, the schedule of the world. And then before we're ready, or, like right before we're ready for the final version, well, do you ever loop back into this process, so we can say, oh, here's what the kid wrote, do we practice with you, or do you kind of?
Yeah. So of that series of meetings, the final one happens the week of the celebration. We're trying to move them all to make sure they're on Monday afternoons at 4:00 or something. And that's a full run through. That's doing almost all the prayers, having the kid at the lectern, hearing their voice in the sound system, delivering their Devar Torah, reading from the scroll, usually not for the first time. And it's at that point that I'm working with them on eye contact and affect and projection and pause, and really trying to turn the thing into a really lovely deliverable. And so, yes, I'm back with the family that final week to reconnect. Depending on how these processes play out and what we learn along the way, I may have seen the text before that. I suppose I might hear it for the first time at the rehearsal, but that would be a point of connection. And then we've got the celebration a couple days later, and I wanted to make the point that you may decide to come and celebrate that morning with them. You will have created a relationship with the kid, and the pleasure I take in seeing the kid deliver what we've worked on together is pretty significant. Debbie Morgenthaler would often come to the services of kids she tutored. She just loves seeing them shine after all the work they've put in. So you could take a look at your calendar and see if you have anything else going on that Shabbat. Maybe you want to come and celebrate with the kid. So, who still needs convincing? Here's the other thing that we could do. If somebody is feeling nervous, come talk to me ahead of time, and we can one-on-one figure out how to make the whole thing feel really comfortable for you. My suspicion is once you get through 1 or 2 kids, you'll realize that there is nothing to worry about. You are so thoroughly capable of doing what it is we're trying to do with and for these kids, that you'll never look back. 4 kids down the row, you'll get a question that you want to ask me, but generally you're going to find that this is very much attainable for each of us. Okay. Is there anybody who is ready? Like I said, I only have these couple of family names up here. I haven't yet just transferred all the material here, but we've got the first couple of kids coming up. Do any of you see a kid on the list that you would you'd like to tackle? Betsy?
I'm happy to take any of them. I'm happy to do it. Take any of them.
Okay. Well, Sophia,
I have to look at the dates actually, because now it occurs to me that I have no idea whether or not there's dates I'm away. But
Okay.
I don't think I'm away any of those dates.
So, here's a good example. So, Sophia is a kid who's just been working through a lot the last year or year and a half. She's a bright kid. She needs adults she can trust, and so Betsy is a fabulous person to work with her. Ethan Lapine is as easy as they come. He's a smart boy. He's really got a great nature about him. Super supportive family. Both these families are super supportive. So each one of them is, a great kid. I actually don't think I know Emily Klein. I didn't even recognize her parents' names. I think they're pretty new members, aren't they, Jane? So this is not a family I have a whole lot of background on. More, Erica, do you know anything about? Oh, well, you can't even tell us if you do.
He's been writing in the chat.
What does she got here?
Betsy, you're away from the 8th to the 13th of August.
Jay?
I'm away more than that, Leah. We'll talk.
Yeah, Leah, go ahead.
No, I'm good. I'm happy to take anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard someone call my name. I thought it was you.
Oh, it was me, Jay. It was Karen.
Sorry, Karen.
I don't know any of the boys and girls. So maybe we can talk about, who might be a good fit. So I'm completely flexible, whoever you assign me to.
Okay, great.
And maybe we'll talk about it.
Okay. All right then, Betsy, can I put your name down here? Fabulous. Karen, you want to take on Ethan?
Wait, hold on one sec. That would be fine, but I just wanted to say that, I'm a retired special education teacher. And so if there were children who had, different learning styles or needed something in particular, that might be a good kid to match me up with. And so
Okay,
maybe you and Erica can decide that.
That is really good to know. Thank you. I will absolutely keep that in my back pocket. Dennis.
Yeah, I just want to, I'm going to be gone 2 weeks in September. I'll be out of the country. And then there's the high holidays that sort of flow all after that. So that makes a big chunk of time out of a schedule that may be like from 8:15 to 10:15. I don't know how that would work out really. Or am I better off waiting until, it's after another group of kids come through where it's after?
Sure. Yeah, you can definitely wait if it doesn't work for your calendar. That's the advantage of taking a look and seeing if you're even around. I regularly meet with kids who are in Vail skiing or whose family are up in Maine for 2 weeks of vacation. During the summer, we don't so much meet from camp, but I have done it. I've met with a couple of kids from Eisner and Crane Lake. So my point only is, if you want to, and this is not speaking to you, Dennis, this is speaking in general, if a person wants to, you could continue the process from wherever you're going. If you want to meet with them from the beach, you go right ahead. But yes, if you're otherwise busy, if the high holidays are going to get in the way, there's no way really around that. It's why Jane was suggesting that we might be starting Sophia early just to get it underway. Because if we wait until August and she's not back yet, and then you've got the holidays, it can compress it. But as far as the holidays go, if you're meeting on a Wednesday night, it doesn't really matter that Rosh Hashanah is happening the following Monday or something.
Yeah. My biggest concern was one is, I'll be really totally in a different time zone. I'll be like 5 time zones away. So that's like makes it a little bit inconvenient. But also since it's there could be as much as a 2.5 week hiatus between meetings with the kid.
Yep.
And particularly, probably equally important is that it would be my first go through. So, and I would want to make sure my head's in the right place for that, and not just what I'm worried about and trying to get an internet connection in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. That's a strong point.
I'm going to try one more time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, it's all Shelly's fault. She got me a new webcam. I just will back up quickly and say hi and thank you for being here. And I look forward. I'm also here to help and support. I was gonna jump in. Karen, where'd you go? Oh, there were Karen or Betsy in particular, because I know you and your skill sets. Emily Klein really will need some support and would be a good fit for either of you. She has a fairly new traumatic brain injury, which has caused learning deficit and sort of mirrors what would look like, of a child who was born with learning differences, and probably would be a good fit for either of you. Leah, I know you as well, probably a good fit. We could certainly talk more. Family is wonderful and engaged and ready and willing to work alongside. So that's just my 2 cents there. And since I offered to help with technology, I'm just feeling glad that I got my own technology. But in terms of using the Google Documents or spreadsheets, any way we can support you, we can all be helpful there too.
Okay. Jay, I'm just going to look through my calendar and see what's going on, and then I'll let Jane know what my availability is as far as, for Emily or another
That sounds
boy or
great.
girl.
I already put your name next to Emily, so we'll
Okay.
wait and get confirmation from you. Anybody want to work with Ethan Lapine?
Before you go, Jay, what was the date for Emily?
She is October 22nd. Thanks,
Okay.
Robin. I just put your name next to Ethan.
Rabbi, do the families know about this process? Like, can I reach out to Amanda at this point, or is it premature?
You mean?
I mean, it's premature in terms of the process, but.
Well, I definitely wouldn't reach out to Amanda because this is not her kid. I think you meant Jen Kramer.
Yes, I did, but I could reach out to Amanda and ask her how Jen is doing.
So no, I would say that the Jen knows about it, but in general, families are not aware of this new system yet. Most of them won't know or care because most of these kids are either onlys or oldest. But a family like Ethan, he's the youngest, that's a family I'd probably call and explain the change so that they understand what's happening. But this will be a very short window of time where a family might think, wait a second, my older kid met with the rabbi 8 times. I don't think that's going to happen very much. So yes, you can reach out to Jen.
And how about Amanda?
Yeah, tell her I say hi.
Okay.
Great. So I think I'm going to offer, as we get into the fall, to maybe just like this, I'll throw up another date for us to try and come together for anybody who wants it, just to refresh. I'm going to send you some materials now. I'll have them available for you again then. And then as often as you want a refresher, I'd be happy to connect with anybody. Remember, you're saving me a boatload of time and allowing me to focus elsewhere. So, a conversation here and there to make sure you're feeling good and strong about it is well worth my time. Don't feel sheepish about asking.
I bring coffee.
I'm gonna going to begin to close this down with just yet another expression of gratitude. This is a part of my job I'm not great at, and so being able to bring in you who are going to be great at it is really reassuring. The kids are the ones who are going to benefit here, and I hope you get something out of it too. I find it to be really gratifying. So, with that, I'll go ahead and